We just finished up day one of NAB Show 2015, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity for me and David to sit down and kind of go over our thoughts, impressions, feelings about the show. This was our first time for each of us.
Yes, it was.
What did you think about the show just in general?
Well, it being the first time I've ever been here, but having heard about it like past few years, I didn't realize it was going to be so large.
Yeah.
It was a lot bigger than I expected.
Yeah, walking around, we covered 2 conference halls in the day, and there's 3 total. So there's a whole conference hall that we didn't even see today.
Yeah.
I wish I had a Fitbit so I could have tracked how many steps we took, but I don't believe in those things.
No, yeah, it definitely took just half the day to walk through. Not really to actually focus in on any in particular products that we wanted to look at, but...
Yeah, because at each booth, I mean, we only had 5-10 minutes to kind of ask a few questions, and then it was like, all right, let's move on to the next thing because don't want to get stuck here. But what was your the coolest or maybe your favorite takeaway? It doesn't have to be like the best thing you saw. Just what stood out to you the most?
Well, I mean, from the first, like right as soon as we walked in, I mean, given it was a sea of people, but the first thing we saw was the Blackmagic booth. Mm-hmm. So the first thing coming in, it was all about the Ursa Mini.
Yeah, where we walked in, because we walked into the South Hall, and Blackmagic had their booth set, and it was huge. Like I think it was the biggest booth. It felt like the biggest because it was all open. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know Red was right there, and their booth was really big too. But they had kind of like it sectioned off for a viewing theater. But Blackmagic was huge, and everyone, swarmed the Ursa Mini. It was kind of funny. They had the Ursa, the micro cinema camera, and the Ursa Mini, and everyone was around that glass. I think they only had the one camera, and you couldn't really play with it. But one thing I really liked about Blackmagic's booth compared to everyone else's, forget the specs, forget whatever about the cameras, but the way they had it laid out, I don't know if you noticed, but on every case where they had the camera, they had a little kind of highlight sheet for each camera, spec sheet, and they had the price.
Yes.
Like, I didn't see another booth that did the exact same thing, where it was really easy to see, okay, what do I need to know about this product? Like, what are the key takeaways? Panasonic kind of did it.
Yeah, I think the only other one that I remember was Small HD. Small HD had...
Oh, they did do that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. With their new, I think it was the 502.
Right.
It was, I guess, I don't know if it's the successor to the DP4, but it's double the price. Better resolution, has the same LP6 battery intake, which I know the DP4 you can get a few different variations for batteries. So,
because you own a Small HD monitor, right?
Yeah, the DP4.
Okay. Are you interested in the new 502?
I was pretty interested. It's very light. The fact that you can have looks already preset in there does pretty much everything that the DP4 does. Double the price, but for what it is, it's definitely a step up.
Yeah, it was over $1,000, right, for that. Yeah, which is cool. I mean, it had a great looking screen. Really cool. It was funny though. You went to touch it because you thought it was like a touch screen.
I thought it was gonna be a touch screen. I mean, after going to the Atomos and hanging around their booth, which was also extremely large, I was like, man, everything's touch screen nowadays, right? GH4, Atomos, not Small HD.
So. Yeah. They had a little click wheel. That's cool. But let's go back to the Blackmagic design booth, because I think that is, every year Blackmagic makes big waves with their announcements, and then people get really excited for the cameras, and then the cameras finally come out, and there's drawbacks or workarounds or things that people aren't super happy with. Mm-hmm. Do you think, well, first of all, maybe we should talk about the specs of the Ursa Mini, just in case people don't know. So it's kind of confusing, and I don't know if you caught this, but I was talking to the guy. Basically, the way he explained it was they have this new 4.5K sensor.
Yeah.
So greater than 4K, 4.6K, sorry. 4.6K sensor, 15 stops dynamic range, and you can do different frame rates depending on the processing power of the camera. They're still using, though, the 4K sensor. Both these sensors are Super 35. The 4K sensor, that is only 12 stops of dynamic range. Mm-hmm. And that one, I don't know.
$1,000 cheaper?
$2,000 cheaper. Yeah. So it's kind of weird. The Blackmagic cameras are kind of getting this like split in their product line because you've got the Ursa Mini, you've got the Micro Cinema camera,
Pocket.
you kind of have the Pocket Cinema camera, the production camera, the studio camera, the Micro Studio camera, and then on top of that, like the Ursa, there's the 4.6K Ursa, the 4K Ursa, 4.6K Ursa Mini, 4K Ursa Mini, and
I mean, even the guy was talking about he had 28 SKUs just for cameras.
Yeah.
So
he's trying to memorize it all, but
yep.
Essentially, from my understanding, what it breaks down to is the Ursa is the big dog, and the 4.6K sensor, 15 stops dynamic range, 4.6K resolution, and that maxes out at 120 frames on the Ursa. On the Ursa Mini, it maxes out at 60 frames, if I'm remembering correctly. But it was 60. Hold on, because there's a caveat. 30. Okay, so on the Ursa Mini, it maxed out at 30 frames a second global shutter.
Yeah.
60 frames a second if you're doing rolling shutter. The 4K sensor on the Ursa Mini maxes out at 60 frames global shutter. So it seemed like there was this trade-off between resolution, dynamic range, and frame rates. So the wisest thing you could probably do is look at a product sheet and a spec sheet, because it's really hard to follow when you're like talking to the guy at the booth. I'm like, wait, what? Hold on, which one does what? And he was getting confused.
Yeah, he's getting confused as well. So.
But it looks like a cool camera. It's kind of shaped like a FS7 or something.
Yeah. It did surprise me how many Ursas we saw filming just general content.
I feel like they like paid people to be there with Ursa.
Ursas.
I don't think that, but
okay. So I did see a few people roaming around. I know the Rode people, the Rode mic. Yep. They were going around filming with the Ursa specifically,
as well as
their camera.
Yeah, and as well as like multiple other kind of show floor interview type people.
Yeah, which I mean, they weren't specifically for a particular notable brand as Rode, but
it was the only environment where I've seen that many Ursas. But it's not surprising considering we saw so many people just with cameras of some kind. A lot of FS100s, FS700s, a lot of C100s, C300s.
And even some cinema cameras as well, the Blackmagic Cinema.
Yep, saw a few of those. No one was filming with anything red, no Scarlets or Epics, but that kind of makes sense. No, like AJA has that Scion camera that I didn't see anyone with. Yeah. We saw those at their booth, but again, they didn't have any like product spec sheet right there where you could see if they were doing anything new. They just had the cameras pointed at kind of a scene that was set up, which, it's fun if you want to just like play with the camera, but you kind of also want to know a detailed, especially the price. For most of the stuff, you're like, what? How much does this cost? Oh crap! But so after Blackmagic, we walked over to Red because it was right there, and they revealed their kind of weapon body upgrade. So they're still using the Dragon sensor, but they've got this new body called Weapon. And again, there's like this weird like multi-SKU confusion. So the Weapon Magnesium does 6K, 100 some frames a second, and then it kind of tiers down from there, and it does like 2K ProRes files as well. And then they have the Weapon Carbon Fiber that maxes out at 8K. It's got a bigger sensor that's like VistaVision or full frame, and then it tiers down 6K, 5K, and it also does ProRes recording, which I thought was kind of interesting that they added. But it's really hard to keep all this stuff straight because it's all called the same thing. They just have all these different SKUs. So you'd really have to kind of drill down into the details and figure out what exactly it is you're getting and what you want. It's cool that they're upgrading their sensor to be a little bigger, especially at that point when you're offering 8K. It's like, how many pixels can you even fit in a certain compact size? At some point you have to expand it. But their booth was just kind of dark and morbid.
It was a lot more grunge.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I did not know that they had that kind of feel to their brand, but it was definitely like metal grunge type of feeling going in there. Everything was black, red. I mean, given those other colors, but all the employees were a little hardcore.
Well, and they were filming stuff like dead bodies.
Yeah.
And like, not real dead bodies, but like posed mannequins, skulls and bones.
Yeah, it seemed like a really dirty basement kind of slop sink with blood, and it was dark.
Yeah.
It was very dark.
Other cool booth we checked out was Panasonic's booth, and again they did the thing where they gave you the features at least for the cameras, and they kind of broke it down, but they didn't give you any price points for these things. So have to look that up later. But they announced the DVX 200, which is kind of a blast from the past upgrade, and they also are coming out with the GH4 firmware 2.2, and it was kind of confusing as well. They were talking about a new picture profile called Vlog L, and that's coming later. But the current firmware that they're soon to release in like a week or so offers an anamorphic mode to the GH4, which we saw in person, which is actually pretty impressive. If you shoot with anamorphic lenses, especially like 2x anamorphics, it's going to be a big deal. The one thing I wasn't super impressed with was that you couldn't monitor anamorphic, like unsqueezed directly in the camera.
Yeah.
You needed an external monitor that supported the de-squeezing, which...
They had the Atomos as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they had the Atomos and then the Odyssey 7Q both set up, and they were actually sending a feed to an anamorphic display, like a 2.35 to 1 ratio TV, which necessarily those aren't super common. So, but it was cool. It looked really nice. They had some of the test Vlog L picture profile turned on, and it was super flat. They claimed it added 2 extra stops to the dynamic range for the camera. So they're saying with Vlog L you'll get 12 stops, and in a roundabout way, I guess they're saying that the current camera in its current form only gets about 10 stops. Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. I'm excited, especially owning a GH4. That'll be fun to play around with. But I don't know the next time I'm getting my hands on some anamorphic glass. It probably won't be anytime soon. But it's a nice option to have, especially considering that sensor is 4x3. So it's not a full readout. I asked that as well. It's not a full readout of the full sensor, so you're still getting a little bit of a crop, but you're getting more vertical resolution than you currently are with the GH4 and just kind of regular 16:9 mode. We didn't really check out Canon's booth all that much.
No, that's something we're gonna need to do this next time around, because I know they had a couple of announcements, especially the C300 Mark II, and what was it, the XC10?
Yeah, I made some videos for those. Already shared my thoughts. I'm really not impressed with anything Canon.
No, I mean, yeah, they need to step up their game.
Well, I mean, they're making stuff that people want, but then they're charging this premium for it. When you're looking at specs, at least on paper, it's kind of like there's other cameras on the market that do the same or less.
Yep.
And even in some cases, sometimes they do better. You look at the C300 Mark II, and if you compare it to like an FS7 or even like the Ursa or other cameras like that, you're kind of wondering what Canon's charging for.
Yeah.
It's just for the Canon logo on the camera, because you're not getting that much more. And there's some people who really like the way Canon files look, or their color, or whatever. But for me, it's usually not worth paying that premium, because it's so minor, the difference.
So other things would be the DJI booth. We spent quite a bit of time there.
Yeah, the DJI booth, that was cool. What did you think of the Ronin M?
Well, if the batteries were turned on, I mean, once we got up there, when we picked it up, I remember before we got there, I remember reading up on it, and everyone was saying it's half the weight from the original. I was like, oh man, it must be really light. So picked it up, and it was actually relatively heavy, in my opinion. But
yeah, it wasn't.
It might be lighter, but it's definitely heavy. And
yeah,
I think they were flying a GH4, so it wasn't anything crazy. I know it can support up to, what was it, 12 pounds?
I think the Ronin M is 8 pounds.
8 pounds. The original is 12.
Is that the original? Okay, it could be. You're probably right. The one guy who worked for DJI had the regular Ronin, not the M.
Yeah.
And he had like the Epic and everything like rigged out on it. He's kind of showing someone else how to. But did you see like how much he was sweating?
Oh yeah, he had a full rig on. Yeah,
And he even had the kind of like over the head like support harness
Yeah.
to kind of take some extra weight off. And I'm sure it was probably hot there, and he'd been holding it for a while. But he looked like he was dying.
Yes, I mean after having, I'm sure he was demonstrating that thing all morning. But yeah, it looked intense. But then once we had our hands on, it was unfortunate that the batteries were dead, but it might be cool.
Yeah.
I think we got our fix when we walked over to the Defy booth.
Yeah, and Defy's cool because they're based in Phoenix, which is kind of where we're from. But I have to look at the actual specs on paper and see what's more. I think the DJI stuff is a little cheaper, a little bit more affordable. I have heard that like support from their company isn't always the greatest, but I know a lot of people who are really happy with their product. So
Yeah.
I don't personally own anything of theirs, so I would have to do a little bit more digging before I made any firm analysis. But the Defy booth was cool because they've got a bunch of different gimbal setups. They've got the G2X is the newest that's kind of flying for like A7Ss and GH4s. But they've got some beefier stuff. There's like a G12, G5. But they've also got Dactyl Cam, which is kind of like a cable cam wire system that is probably too expensive for most regular people to buy.
Yeah.
But as a rental, or if you wanted to really specialize in that, it's something to definitely check out because it was
And
pretty cool.
That's something they're going into as opposed to going with their aerial systems, just like flying things.
Yeah.
Especially. It's a different market.
Yeah. Speaking of flying things, Free Fly, their
Yes.
booth was...
The Mimic.
Yeah. So did you see the video? You saw the video. I sent it to you, right?
The Chase Jarvis video.
Yeah, well, he was featured.
He was in it.
Yeah. He was in it, as well as other people. But they basically kind of released a teaser video for the Mimic. And many people probably saw it because I thought it was a pretty good, well-made video. You don't really see the product. It's just people's reactions.
Yeah. I wasn't a fan of the video.
What? I liked it. I thought it was clever.
No, I'm sick of those videos.
But yeah, we got to play with the Mimic hands-on, and I was really impressed.
It was definitely funny watching people for the first time kind of get a hold onto it, and they didn't really know what to do. They were like, wait, I turn my body and it turns the camera that you have over there. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it took people 5 to 10 seconds like most people just stood there and were looking at the screen and they're like, oh, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And there was always somebody else there telling them like, oh, turn, or, oh, tilt it, or, whatever. And essentially the way it works is you're looking at a screen, and whatever you do with the screen is what the camera does. And so you can position it very, very easily. And when I got my hands on it, it was like just, he's like, oh, pick something to follow. And it was 1-to-1. There was virtually no lag, really smooth, really seamless. And he said it's only compatible with Movies, so you need to kind of buy into that system.
Yeah.
But he said they're looking to sell this accessory for only like $500 or something.
So, how much easier was it for that to control as opposed to just a joystick?
I'm sure the seasoned people who are used to joysticks, they probably are like, well, you just get used to it. It's like, like playing video games or whatever.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I am very used to using joysticks.
Right.
Having played video games growing up. So, I think I would be more accustomed to that, but I didn't try it when I was at the booth. So.
It took virtually no effort. Like, I didn't have to think about it,
and the whole deal is you're just holding that one portion, so you don't have to hold the whole weight of the camera.
Yeah.
Someone else doing that and having that distance from the subject, but you're just motioning for the camera.
Yeah, the way they had it set up, and I'm sure people have seen pictures or video of it, but it was essentially like two handles on a bar, and they had a screen, and they had like a wireless HDMI transceiver, and they had all this stuff, so it looked like a pretty big device.
It reminded me of the Wii, the newest Wii, the Wii U.
Oh yeah, like the tablet.
It has a screen in the middle, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But the actual device that they're selling isn't any of that.
Yeah.
It's just a little black box that's probably like an inch by an inch that is just like the accelerometers and inertial information that is being sent from the Movi. And so the whole thing that you're holding is there's not it's kind of pointless.
Yeah.
It's just a mechanism to translate that information back to the Movi. So holding it, it felt really natural. It was really intuitive. It didn't have to learn anything. It's something that if you're on set and you have one of these, you can just hand to anybody. And it's like, hey, point it at the car, you know, or point it at the model, or point it at the bowl of fruit. It was really easy. And Freefly also announced a heavy-duty drone and a wireless focus iris zoom setup, and one other thing. What did they announce? We didn't really look at a whole lot of it because the Mimic was taking... It was impressive. Yes. People were like smiling and laughing and having fun with it. What I didn't have fun with, and we weren't going to talk about this, but what did you think of the virtual reality headset that we put on? The virtual footage that we looked at with the Oculus.
It was extremely unimpressive. I mean, from what I know we've both heard is, I know you mentioned you've heard people say, it's like looking into another dimension, another reality. It looks so vivid, it's so clear.
I felt like I was there.
Yeah, which is completely the opposite of what we experienced. I don't know, maybe it was maybe it was the first edition that they came out with, because I know there's...
It was DevKit 2.
It was a DevKit 2.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And like, I put it on having never experienced any virtual reality. And only hearing like amazing things and seeing videos of people like just in awe over this thing. Put it on, and the first thing I'm like, man, those are some big pixels. Yeah. Like that's all I could see. They're showing like this great footage of like being on a boat and like going around this beautiful sunset, and I'm just staring at the pixels like I'm looking at a screen. And yeah, you move and like it looks around, but it didn't feel like I was in another world.
I mean, that portion is impressive, being able to turn your head and have it look in the direction you're looking, but the view is just horrible. It's someone put a TV in your face is what it looks like.
What else did we see?
Red Rock.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
So their focus system.
Yeah, Halo is what they call it. And it's essentially, the guy was explaining it like the technology that's in a vehicle, like your car when you're backing up, and it senses that there's an object there and it knows kind of how close or how far away it is, and it beeps at you. He said, and this could probably just be marketing speak, but he said it's that same technology, and they're essentially using it for basically the system knowing where your actors are in a scene. And so he demonstrated it by having, couple actors step out into the scene, and the Halo picked them up immediately, and they show up as kind of two dots on this little graphic display. And as they moved, again, there was no lag. It was, these dots moved, and the camera was able to both automatically or manually track focus for them. Then there was I don't know if it was part of the system. I want to go back tomorrow and dig a little deeper, because there's some questions I have. Like, the way they had that camera set up, it was perfectly level with the subjects, so there wasn't any like height differences to worry about. So I wonder if that's like a limitation of it. And I also wanted to see, I forget what else I wanted to see, but it was something. So we're gonna go check it out tomorrow. But it was pretty neat, because it was a manual and autofocus control of moving subjects coming forward and into the background, which was pretty powerful.
Oh yeah, I mean, it just reminded me of like sonar technology.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna ask if the focus iris zoom controller was theirs, or if it worked just with like other ones.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like the one from Freefly, or I heard DJI is working on one as well. So we shall see. Oh, we saw. Who did we see? Rodney Charters at the Atomos presentation. So Atomos was giving away. Well, they weren't giving away. You got to spin kind of this Wheel of Fortune thing, and whatever you landed on, there was like a water bottle, a shirt, or we think a chance to win a Shogun. And so we both walked away with shirts. But to get the casino chip that you needed to play this spin the wheel game, we had to go sit in a presentation, which ended up not being so bad.
After their technical difficulties.
Yeah. But it was really weird because, so Rodney Charters is a, well-known director of photography, cinematographer, worked on tons of different stuff, TV, movies, documentaries. And he just like starts talking. No microphone, nothing. And I was kind of wondering, like...
I mean, he's an older guy. He just seems like that kind of guy. He just...
But they had to be doing
how's everyone going?
presentations earlier in the day. Was he doing all of them, or was that just...
I don't know. It seemed like that was his first presentation.
So did everyone get a different speaker?
Probably. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming they would have had all the kinks worked out.
Yeah, right?
But yeah, he went in there and he was having all of the technical difficulties you could have when playing back your video, or your mic not working, or everything was wrong.
Yeah.
So,
but by the end of it, I was pretty into it. He had some
there was
interesting...
there was no audio for
any of his clips.
For any of his clips, but he was able to talk and give us insight on what exactly he was showing. So it was impressive what he showed as far as the actual material he shot with the team.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the material he shot by himself?
Oh yeah. He opened it up with stuff where he basically said, like, I spent like 10 minutes this morning filming some footage with the Shogun, so here it is.
And it was extremely shaky. He was like, I apologize, I didn't bring my tripod or anything.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, though, to get his insights as someone who's worked in the industry for so long. I mean, he was talking about, filming with the Alexa and the Red 1 when that came out.
He started from 16 millimeter film.
Mm-hmm.
Worked his way.
And then, he's shot stuff where he's shooting plates with 10 GH4s strapped to a car and all this stuff. And then I asked him, I said, what was your favorite shot? And you'd think, he'd something like epic.
Yeah. And
he got a little teary-eyed, which I felt really bad for asking him a question that made him tear up. Mm-hmm. But he talked about, it was a movie I totally forgot about, Fly Away Home.
Yeah.
And he had filmed some ducks or geese flying
next to their plane
on a DV cam, and he was just like, that was the best thing I ever shot. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So
that is cool.
I mean, don't worry about the camera or even it sounded like he didn't even have, it was just him.
Yeah, it was an experience for him for sure.
Yeah.
It was, what was the best experience you had ever filming something, and I'm pretty sure that was it. But what did you think about when he said pretty much up-resing footage?
Oh, that you couldn't really tell because the 4K is, what word did he use? Yeah, that was really weird because he was basically
pretty much upscaling.
But he was promoting the Shogun, which records 4K, and then during his presentation, he's like, "Oh, whatever, I've shot with Alexa and upscaled to 4K and Red and 4K, and it's all the same."
Yeah.
And I was like, "So, okay, a little bit of honesty here. All right, great."
I mean, he was talking about just all the post houses that enjoy having the ProRes files in 4K.
Yeah.
Because they don't like working with any of the older Canon footage that people usually are used to shoot on, and a lot of the stuff he did shoot on were the old Canon files that were 1080, and they're expecting them to be 4K. So he's like, "Oh yeah, use the Automotion, just upscale them to 4K." Oh, great.
Was there anything else cool that we saw?
I mean, there was so much. There were a ton of drones. I didn't realize the drone market was so saturated. I mean, because all we hear about nowadays are just the DJI Phantoms, but
there are a lot of, there was a whole quadrant of booths just dedicated to drones, people selling drones, people learning about drones, drone accessories.
Yeah, there was a whole presentation DJI was putting on about just regulations on drones and all the rules, and I thought that was pretty interesting because nobody really follows the rules when flying the drones, as we know from all the news stories about people flying them over the White House and over restricted airspaces. So
yeah, and you'd mentioned this when we were at the show, but it was interesting how many non-drone manufacturers had drones in their booths.
Yes.
Just rigged for no apparent reason other than to say, look, here's our camera on a drone, or hey, here's a drone, come check out our booth, we sell TVs.
It was almost the equivalent of having a booth babe, because you're like, ooh, a drone. Oh,
they don't do drones.
They don't do drones. It's just there to catch my eye.
There were so many of them, though. It was comical how many drones there were just mounted on random booths.
Yeah, it was that, and also we saw a ton of the green screen technology that was going around.
Oh yeah,
but that's more for broadcast television.
Yeah, the live studio tracking. So they're on a green screen and they're compositing real time a 3D set behind them, and it's really impressive technology, but it still always looks
fake.
Yeah, just cheesy and just kind of bad.
Yeah.
I don't really know who that's meant for because
I don't know. It's impressive, but
your CNNs, your Foxes, your MSNBCs, they're all going to have like a set.
They build up their sets, yeah.
A real set, and then I imagine your lower budget, news productions can't even afford that technology, so they're probably just going to build a cheap set.
Yep.
So I'm not really sure who that is geared towards, but it was interesting. Did you see the one that they weren't tracking the background? They had a set, but they were tracking like a football field.
Yes, yeah.
In front in 3D, that was really cool.
Yeah, I know ESPN does that a lot, so it was interesting to see it actually like right in front of us. Because I know, who was it? Sports Nation used to do it a lot, where they used to have graphs and charts pop up in front of the two anchors so that you could see stuff in 3D space. It was interesting, but to actually see it in person was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you would know better than me. I don't watch sports, so.
Oh, yeah. ESPN, they essentially shoot inside of a spaceship.
Yeah.
So if you ever watch ESPN or any of those, the programs just every year it seems like they get more and more futuristic with their set design. So yeah. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think we should wrap this up. We've been talking for long enough. I'm sure there's stuff that was missed that we didn't talk about that other people have covered already. Maybe it's something we'll see tomorrow, but for day one anyway, I feel like we made some pretty good groundwork.
Oh yeah.
Walking the convention halls. It was, again, if you've never been to NAB, I don't want to say that we're exhausted. Like, we're still going. It's fine. I don't want to like complain.
Oh no.
It's just you feel it by the end of the day. Like,
oh yeah.
4 or 5 o'clock, we were tired.
Yeah. One thing I do want to say though, I mean, having been to quite a few conventions over the past year, it's nice to go to this convention because almost everyone in every booth is smiling because the technology that they're, representing, their company, everyone's so excited to reveal their new products. So that's always refreshing to see someone smiling like, "Oh, you got to see this. You got to try this out." And I think that's really cool.
There's definitely an energy, especially like you could kind of feel it at the different booths. Like Blackmagic, especially, there was like this energy or this desire, like people to like, "Oh, what is this camera? Like, tell me about it. What does it do?" Compared to like the Red booth, which was much more mellow and somber and just very like, "This is the cool kids club.
Yeah,
don't come in here asking questions." It's kind of like, yeah, whatever. We're Red. But then the Panasonic booth was packed, and they had the GH4 like crammed over in this corner, and yet there always were people there. The FreeFly systems, the Mimic, people were really into that, having fun. It was one of those moments where it wasn't just about the person using the product. It was about the person using the product around other people, and to where we were all enjoying someone else getting to do something fun. Where a lot of the booths, it's like a salesperson talking to an attendee, and it's what are the specs, how much does it cost, okay, thanks, and move on.
I mean, it was almost like being on a film set because whenever someone does have, like, if you're around the cinematographer, it's always like, "Oh, he's breaking out his equipment. Oh man, what's he gonna do with it? Looks pretty cool." So it's pretty much that same mentality when you see someone pick up some sort of rig and you're just like, "Oh man, that's so cool."
Yeah, and the Atomos booth too also had like a fun kind of energy. They did that. The raffle at the end of the day was pretty effective in just getting all these people in a space together, and it's so cool because we're all here for the same stuff. We're all here to learn more and to advance either our own skills through technology or attending workshops or classes to expand our knowledge. It's just a fun place to be with a really cool energy, and I definitely recommend coming if you've never been before. It's probably not for everybody because it is hard to get around to all the different stuff. You're kind of like, man, if this was on a blog, I could just like click to the next page and find the next news story, but we had to like walk a mile to the next booth. But it was a lot of fun.
It was exciting.
Cool. Well, that'll be it for this impromptu, podcast, whatever it's going to be.
Podcast coverage of NAB 2015. Yeah.
Yeah.